Howdy mates, here we go. Here's a part 5 video for today, and this is probably going to be my last one. I've made quite a few today. Kind of a bit much for one day. So my last video, I was talking a bit about the Sandhill wireweed, and I was also talking a bit about the history of Lake Wales Ridge, as well as hardiness zones. However, though, this video, I want to show off a little more of the flora, so to speak. So, first and foremost that I want to show you guys right away, and knowing that you're at a sandhill community, is wiregrass, right here. So wiregrass, as you can see, it's fairly abundant here. And you'll only find them in scrub communities. Scrub mostly describes like the more broader term. Sandhill is a bit more specific because sandhills refer to ancient sand dunes that haven't been eroded by any means, so it creates a little bit of some elevation. But wiregrass is also, it is mostly like an endemic plant. You won't really see them in any other community besides scrub. And the thing is, the scrub habitat in general is actually endangered. Or I should say it's the most threatened. There's only a small percentage of scrub habitat that is left in the world. And so wiregrass typically, has a blooming time of around spring or so. And you can see that it is a bit rhizomatic. So wiregrass is another great indication for knowing if you're at a scrub. We actually have some scrub oak here. Please correct me if I may be mistaken. I know some of you are a little more expertise on this. Frankly, identifying oaks down here in Florida has been way more of a struggle. Because originally I'm up from Ohio, so most of the oaks up in Ohio have very distinct leaves. Unlike in Florida, on the other hand, a lot of them look very similar. But scrub oak is also another rare tree that you will find here in Florida because it's mostly grown only in scrub. We've actually got another type of oak. Turkey oak, right here. Just watching my footing. So turkey oak is actually one of the only few deciduous oak trees that you'll find in Florida. You can see that it has a little bit of its fall foliage. And not only that, but given that all oaks produce acorns, they're a great food source for our wildlife. But they ecologists call it turkey oak because of the leaf. So let's find an example. Yeah. So like, if you look at the top of the leaf, you can see those three distinctive points. We commonly name plants based on features we're already familiar with. So looking at this, ecologists believed like those three tips resembled a turkey's foot. But the funny thing is, there actually is a particular plant called big blue stem that also looks similar to a turkey's foot. But I don't believe big blue stem is found down here. But there is a split beard blue stem, and we might be lucky to find some here, but that's hit or miss. But that's the point, is much of what we're already seeing here, we would not really see throughout the rest of Florida at all. And of course, one last thing that I want to show you guys is this. Notice all these pine trees here? You know, some of you may already leap towards saying that they are slash pine. As a matter of fact, no, they are not. Slash pine is a bit more common in South Florida, but I'm sure you can see it even in Central Florida too. But no, rather, what you're looking at is longleaf pine. So let me get in a little closer. So longleaf pine has a couple of distinctive features in which you know how to identify it. So if you were to compare a slash pine to a longleaf pine, look at the twigs. So you may notice that the twigs are rather thick, right? Even towards the tip. So in other words, the twig does not taper. Whereas a slash pine, on the other hand, the twig does taper. It gets smaller. And what makes longleaf pine really cool is upon its first couple of years, it initially starts out as a grass so that it can protect this inner cone here from fire. And it's usually said that the needles, that makes conifers distinctive, are usually up to 18 inches long, which surmounts the length of a slash pine needle, which might only be 10 to 12 inches. So once it reaches into its maturity as a tree, these could reach up to 14 inches long. So I mean, that's a good way of also knowing that you're looking at a longleaf pine. But I'm going to try to see if I can find a pine cone real quick. Here we go. We have a longleaf pine cone right here. Initially, when this is still on the tree, they actually have a bit of a green appearance. So you can tell that this one has been off the tree. It doesn't fall far from the tree. That was funny. Anyway, you could see, like, basically the length of this is almost like, I'll have it up to my chin. There we go. It basically goes all the way up to my forehead. So basically, these pine cones, they're some of the largest known pine cones that exist in the world. I mean, just look at this. Whereas like slash pine, the pine cones are way shorter. I mean, it might be, a slash pine cone might only reach to 3/4 of the length of this one. Maybe even half. So that's another thing too. Longleaf pine is also very rare to see down here in the state of Florida. You'll only really see them in Sandhill communities. But you got to think too, longleaf pine used to be much more abundant than what it once was. But due to past exploitation, logging, much of their population has dwindled. So this is really neat to see actual longleaf pines. Just because, I reside down in South Florida by Englewood, and you will not see longleaf pine down there at all. Or at least it's very, very sparse. So one last thing, too, before I wrap up this video. Another common plant that you'll find here is known as the Florida Ziziphus. And that's actually an endangered plant. However, though, you may have a chance to see it here, but they're distinguished by having like a thorn. They're like a thorn-like shrub, and they actually produce berries that kind of resemble apples. And it is said medicinally, Ziziphus was used for, to use them as a sedative. But they serve as an important plant because the only other closely related species is all the way in Mexico. So it goes to prove, or not necessarily prove, but it forms the theory that the Ziziphus found its own way to adapt to this particular location. So that's the thing. We should really care about what these habitats provide, because some of the plants that exist here you will not see anywhere else. And for another, they serve as great host plants and food source for wildlife. So, all right, you guys, take care. Enjoy your Wednesday. And Journey on a Journey is outwards. Take care, folks. See ya.